Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast with KOMO Sports Director Niko and Najee Moye.
Well, hey there, and welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone. He is Najee Moye. I am Niko Tamurian, and this is a fun time of year because obviously football is in the air. College starts this weekend. The NFL follows that up. And next week, we will give you our season prediction for the Seahawks. But today, we want to focus because we all know what you're doing this weekend. You're having fantasy drafts while you watch college football.
Yeah.
And so we want to focus more specifically on our expertise, which is the Seattle Seahawks, from the standpoint that you can read about a million articles out there about sleepers and who not to draft and who to draft, and they're all going to contradict one another. You got to make your own choice there. But we have this acute knowledge of the Seahawks because we're there every day at training camp. We obviously watch this team up close and personal, and we have some interesting takes when it comes to this team. And certainly different leagues have different formats, so this is a general thing. But hey, who doesn't love fantasy football, right, Nash?
I can tell you that my phone has been blowing up right now about when to have a draft. First of all, both leagues.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, I'm in 3 leagues, and 2 of my 3 leagues are talking about what time to have the draft at. We're talking cross country. This is the leagues. There's no conferences in as far as like our KOMO league. We have people in New York. We have people. We're trying to figure out what time to have the draft, the time of day that works for 14 people, because this, like I said, this is a 14-team league, which
that is a massive undertaking.
It is a massive
undertaking.
undertaking.
Find something that works for 14 people.
Yeah, no, it's huge. But no, honestly, what you're doing this weekend, you're waking up in the morning, you're watching Texas and Ohio State, and then you're gonna figure out, okay, NFL draft, who do I pick? Najee and Niko talked about the Seahawks. You're gonna listen to us and figure out, should I take Sam Darnold within the first at all, really? so let's get into it.
It's not a knock on Darnold. It's just the idea that a lot unproven there.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we know the Seahawks scheme is going to be heavy on the run and more kind of incremental passes, so to speak. A lot of bootlegs, a lot of play action passes, finding tight ends. I think the tight ends could be sleepers if you're in a deep enough league. Yeah. I don't know if you're in a more, a smaller league, 10, 12 teams, say, I don't know that it makes sense in that scenario, but I think AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo are going to be in the hunt to get, some looks in red zone situations, and in a PPR scenario, be those kind of guys that'll, maybe get 5 catches.
We're talking about even if we're talking about Seahawks tight ends, even like Elijah Arroyo, who's a rookie, he's probably tight end 2 maybe on the roster right now.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we're talking guys that can get you a good 5-7 points, catching a random touchdown can help.
Yeah.
Especially in the grand scheme of the thing. So I'm saying don't auto draft after you get past the 15th round. And don't reach either, okay? But that is one thing that I always think about when I think about fantasy football. I think about scheme. I think about what the team wants to do. And we talk about not ad nauseum, but quite a bit as far as what the Seahawks want to do with their offense, at least. And we know it's a big departure from what they wanted to do last year, which is throw the ball 50 times a game.
Yeah, it's not going to be that
at all. It's not going to be that. So my question to you, Niko, let's just talk about the first 5 rounds in the draft.
Okay.
Is there any Seahawk offensive player, and you can even make an obvious, that you would maybe take in the first 5 rounds?
Well, first 5 rounds.
You're in a 12-team league.
Okay, well, first of all, it's time for the best fantasy football advice. It's been a while since we were able to pull up that graphic.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay, I'm going to answer the question, but I'm going to give you my hot take for fantasy football.
Carry on.
Not just Seahawks, but for everybody this year.
Okay.
First 5 rounds. Obviously, you're going to want to look at guys like, Kenneth Walker III and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and that's obvious.
Sure.
And that's probably about it. In the first 5 rounds. But what I'd like to say about the Seahawks, Zach Charbonnet is going to win somebody's fantasy league.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why. He's much more than just a handcuff for K9.
Yep.
Even that brings a lot of value because for as prodigiously talented as K9 is, he's often hurt, right? And when he was hurt last year, we saw Charbonnet really play well. And
to that point, I've had Charbonnet. I picked him up pretty late last year. Not one of the late rounds last year. Just thinking I just needed to fill out the team. Started him for a bye week situation. Yeah. And honestly, I remember a couple times he gave me about a good 10, 12 points.
Yeah, and he'll do more when he's the bell cow. And I think that in addition to that, just how much the Seahawks are going to run, how much they're going to use the running backs in the passing game as well.
Right.
So especially if you're talking PPR too. And we've seen both Charbonnet and K9 get touchdown receptions in the past. And that's even in a different scheme that wasn't so heavy on using the guys in that way. So that's my advice, is not in the first 5 rounds. But when it makes sense later, because the idea is in the first 5-6 rounds, you're getting guys that are going to be your main point scorer every year. But I think somebody you can get Charbonnet late enough that you're not sacrificing a prime draft position to get him. I think he's going to be productive regardless of Walker's health. But in the event that K9 has health issues again, you're talking about Charbonnet being the kind of guy that can absolutely, for how much the Seahawks team runs the ball, be a force if he's the bell cow, like if K9 is injured. Additionally, I think he'll still be valuable, like especially if you're talking about the flex conversation, while Walker is healthy. So
let's talk about Walker a little bit, because let's just imagine he plays all 17 games this year. He plays every game this year. And this is the type of offense we know that we're going to run the ball a lot, but K9 is kind of like a shifty type of guy. I mean, compared to Charbonnet, who's kind of almost like a bulldozer. Yeah, really just running down the field. I mean, and I think that we're going to see situations, games where they're both going to get maybe 15 carries a game.
I can see that. Yeah, I do.
So when would you draft K9? Are you worried about drafting K9?
Me personally, yes.
Okay.
But I think that
yes,
it's not.
One?
I don't have the same worry, not just because of draft position of drafting K9 and say somebody like McCaffrey who's hurt literally every season for like extended times. I mean, K9 will play more than he won't. It's not that.
Right.
About Walker, I'd feel good about it in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
I think he in a lot of leagues he'll go in the 2nd round, but I feel good about it in the 3rd. And it's just from the standpoint that at that point, you think about the running backs, certainly the top tier are off the board.
The Bijan Robinsons are gone. Just Saquon Barkley.
Gone. And that next tier, listen, when Walker is healthy, we've seen what he can do.
Sure.
And he's going to be finally given the rock. This isn't what's important to note. Seahawks fans know this. If you're not a Seahawks fan and just Google fantasy advice, here's something you need to know is that Walker was criminally underused last year in the Ryan Grubb college scheme, throw the ball 50 times a game.
Yeah, those times he got maybe 10 attempts. And
you just can't do that.
You just can't do that with the
good running backs need 20 carries.
You gotta
and at least.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say at least, but sometimes those first 10 carries can only give you like 40 yards.
Sure.
And you're still averaging 4 yards a carry, which is kind of the mark, right?
Right.
But then when you get more like 20, you're probably talking about 20 for close to 100, maybe a touchdown in there. And that's the kind of stuff that can win your league. And that's the kind of stuff that, can really be a difference maker for you. And to that end, talent-wise, Kenneth Walker III is a RB1 talent. It's just a matter of health that knocks him down to maybe a 2, so to speak.
This is my kind of standpoint, because when I'm drafting, I automatically draft what other positions where there's limited amount of guys.
Yeah, and running backs are very much like that.
And running backs are that way, and tight ends are that way, especially this year. So I think maybe you can afford to wait on a receiver because there's just so many. Maybe round 1 or 2, or late 1 or 2 to pick your receiver. But if we're talking about Kenneth Walker, I may even consider taking. It depends on when you're picking. I was in a draft earlier this month actually.
Where that's early to do a draft.
Believe me, I'm aware. I ended up drafting the 8th overall, and I ended up with Ashton Genty, who is a rookie, I
think that's a good spot to pick him.
I think it's a good spot to pick him. I was nervous. Now, that being said, when the snake draft came back around, not the 2nd round, but maybe the 3rd round, I was thinking maybe K9 was the guy. He was gone by that time.
Yeah.
He went to pick a couple picks before I was selecting. So this is the type of thing you have to think about. I mean, I hope we wish nothing but the best for K9 and the Seahawks, because I think he's almost integral to their offense. But like your point, Nico, Zach Charbonnet may be the guy who gets the ball in the goal line situations, and 5 yards out, 10 yards out. And he may be the guy. He may end up with more touchdowns at the end of the year
because you're going to try and preserve Walker's health for one.
Yeah.
And not to mention when we use the term "win your league," it's the point I made earlier that you're going to be drafting Charbonnet much later.
Yeah.
You can still have some real big names for your first 5, 6, whatever.
Yeah, for sure. I would see maybe Charbonnet as a flex, but I wouldn't exactly think about starting him right this second.
I wouldn't start him week 1 because I think even for how much we see this Seahawks team wants to run the football and everything like that, you don't really see
Right.
until they lay it all on the table
Yeah.
in week 1 against a divisional opponent.
Right.
And so that'll be the real telltale sign of how much they're going to really run the ball and use these running backs, how they're going to use them. But I would say mid to late rounds, pick up Charbonnet, stash him for week 1 even, and maybe even feel comfortable starting him from there on out, especially if Walker has a health thing. You want to know another key point I have, though, Najee?
What's that?
Your guy,
Mm-hmm.
somebody that you like on the drafting and fantasy for this team. But I want to talk about the receivers,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll let you talk about your guy in a second here. My big point with Seahawks receivers is this. You're not going to get as many home runs like you've seen in recent years. Even go back to the Russ era. You're not going to see guys like DK who get like 60-yard touchdown passes and win your week on one play.
Sure.
That's not necessarily how this Seahawks offense is going to pass the ball. I mean, listen, they're going to take shots. They're not going to not take shots. I just don't think it's going to be their bread and butter like it was tried to be last year.
Right.
So in that sense, if you're in a standard league, I'd be a little worried about drafting Seahawks receivers. JSN is clearly, number 1. However, there's going to be a lot of attention paid to him. Right. And it's a similar dynamic to last year when one of the reasons JSN popped was because Metcalf had so much attention on him. And it freed up Jackson, who was coming into his own, to be lined up against another team's second corner or whatever it might be and blossom the way that he did. Well, now that's not the dynamic, right?
No.
Like he's the starter. He's the bona fide leader. And so, he's going to be productive, obviously. But he's not going to – I don't know that it's going to be quite like we saw last year.
I see JSN as a steal in the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I think he's your top option on this team.
He may be your receiver too.
You're just talking about a different scheme and a different dynamic at this time around.
I think you were seeing him as maybe a receiver too because he's going to get doubled. I kind of think about JSN in the same way I think of Malik Neighbors or even like a Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
A really good receiver that, he's a number 1 and number 2. Now, this is not to knock Cooper Kupp. And I think, honestly, Cooper Kupp is a great flex option. But, we have a little bit of an injury, twinge, there with him. We also have him in a new system. We have him with Sam Darnold, the system that, again, is more focused on running the ball.
Yeah.
Maybe more tight end emphasis as I'm about to get into here. But I'm not saying don't draft Seahawks receivers. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you want a home run threat, this may not be the place that you should first look.
Now, to that end, I think if you're in a PPR league,
mm-hmm.
the Seahawks receivers will carry much more value.
Sure.
And you're like, what the heck are you talking about? They're not going to throw the ball. Well, I think the options are a little bit limited.
Sure.
And I think in that end, you're talking about it doesn't matter if Cooper Kupp's catching a 5-yard slant in the slot. You're still going to get 1.5 points or whatever that might be for that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So in that regard, if you're in a PPR league, again, I'm not going to overdraft the guy, but I think somebody like Cooper Kupp can bring a lot of value. I think especially those tight ends, AJ Barner, Elijah Arroyo, that's where those guys come into play.
I was going to mention
like JSN transcends whatever kind of league you're in.
Right.
But I think these more secondary options, I mean, listen, Torrey Horton made the roster. I'm not saying draft Torrey Horton. Don't necessarily because it's just so unproven. But I mean, Torrey Horton played so well that the Seahawks basically are eating $4 million and letting Marquez Valdez-Scantling go. They're basically paying him to go play on the 49ers.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about.
And
it's because they, roster spots are so limited. And Torrey Horton, they didn't want to risk him on waivers. They were fine losing Valdez-Scantling in that way. So, so that's somebody you got to keep an eye on. Again, more so once you get past JSN, it's more so PPR format from the standpoint that, these guys might catch 6 passes a game and it might only be for like 40 yards, but that puts them very easily on your flex radar.
Let's talk about tight ends for a little while.
Yeah.
Because as you alluded, my guy from the University of Miami, from the U, Elijah Arroyo, who is basically a large receiver.
Yeah.
I almost think of him as DK Metcalf size, really.
Okay.
Thereabout. When you talk about size in the red zone,
right?
When you think about maybe a goal line scenario, Zach Charbonnet behind you, you think about 2 tight ends.
I'm going to tell you something.
These are the thoughts I'm having.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
Right.
Because the one thing I saw Elijah Arroyo do day in, day out, every single day at Seahawks training camp was win jump balls in the end zone.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Almost like Jimmy Graham back there.
Jimmy Graham, see,
right, that's what I thought of when I saw him. I'm not comparing them as players. I'm saying,
and I'm not suggesting that. You reach for him, but I'm saying when you get to a point where you're kind of, the Saturday malaise is kicking in, you're a little bit past in your draft, and maybe I should put on the auto draft, but you see Elijah Arroyo, cue him to the top.
Well,
You'll be glad I did.
that's the key point.
Yeah.
I think there's two ways you draft Elijah Arroyo. If you're in a very deep league, like our 14-team league that has like 77 bench spots.
Now, if you listened to us last year, you know our 14-team league was a point of contention because for whatever reason we had 3 flex positions, no kicker and no defense.
And the flex positions weren't super flex.
They weren't super flex. Yeah. There's been some changes. We were starting people who I was starting people who I thought he could get me 3 points.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was dire.
So it's been fixed this year. That was one former KOMO reporter who shall remain nameless, but you know who you are. So we got to send him this clip. But so here's my point in Arroyo.
Yeah.
If you're in a very deep league like ours that we just described, certainly look at him.
Right.
If you're the kind of person that isn't going to use high capital on a tight end, meaning you're not going to take a tight end in the first couple
tight
rounds.
ends are risky this year.
You're not going to, I mean, like guys who were mainstays in the unit, Kelsey, Mark Andrews, are being drafted further and further down the line.
Right.
And if you're not even comfortable drafting those guys there, Arroyo would be a stash guy. Again, the idea you want to wait and see, or, you make sure you watch him and he's the kind of guy that could have the week 1 performance that suddenly everybody's trying to get him on waivers
exactly
after the first game.
And then
you could be ahead of the curve if you have enough bench spots. That would be recommended.
And then you can have him, and then maybe you can use him as a little trade bait.
Yeah, no question. And listen,
I definitely draft guys knowing I could trade them
for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But you can't ignore AJ Barner either. He's the starter.
Right.
He maybe doesn't have the same tantalizing potential of a guy like Arroyo, but I'm telling you right now, we saw Barner use last year. And yes, the Seahawks passed the ball more last year than we expect them to this year, but the Seahawks are going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets.
Right.
That's why there's 4 tight ends on the 53-man roster.
That means a lot.
There's not a lot of NFL teams that are doing that.
That means a lot.
And that shows you how they're going to be used. Are they going to be blocking? Of course. But the pass game in this Clint Kubiak scheme is going to be predicated on play action.
I can imagine someone lining up at fullback catching the ball at the backfield.
Robbie Utes did that in the preseason game against the Chiefs. Yeah.
So I can see that happening. We talked a lot about offense. Now, I know a lot of leagues, not a lot, some leagues just don't have defenses like our league last year, unfortunately.
Well, they should.
And they should. We know the Seahawks defensive unit, and I am always the one, and I'm always guilty because I know how much a good defense can get you on fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
When do you reach for a defense like the Seahawks defense, one of the top in the league? I think you want to
you got to wait a while before you do that. I mean, I'm not against. I've been in drafts before where there's a dominant league in the defense, like number 1, far and away, forced turnovers, all that.
Sure.
And you draft maybe a little earlier than you would, because if you're not getting that defense, then you might as well wait and just try to do matchup based week by week, and you're gonna have competition in that front.
Yeah.
The Seahawks defense, I would put somewhere between, your all-time elites, like that could get you a ton of points, but certainly I wouldn't wait until
I wouldn't.
If you want to make sure, you absolutely want to make sure you have the Seahawks, I wouldn't wait till the last round. This is a Seahawks defense that is only going to be better than it was last year. The stuff we saw at the end of last year, Kobe Bryant, pick 6, stuff like that is only going to happen more, I believe, this year, because I think every player we've talked to this entire offseason has raved about how much more comfortable they are in this Mike McDonald scheme. And, it's just it's something that's going to be fun to watch, I think. And Ernest Jones here for a full season, you can't discount that. Nick Emanwari is going to be a weapon out there. I think the Seahawks defense certainly is going to be top 5.
I've got the depth chart in front of me here, and I mean, you were talking about Nick and Emanwari, and we're going to have to learn
Emanwari,
yeah, and we'll also have to get used to seeing number 3.
Yeah, sure, on
defense, which is also bizarre for me. You got guys like Julian Love, you got guys like Rick Woolen, you got guys like Kobe Bryant, Derek Hall.
Love Derek Hall, yeah.
Nikola Nwosu, Dexter Lawrence, second year Byron Murphy, also Big Cat. This is a good defense. Yeah, this is a very good defense.
Like, this is the kind of defense that you have them in fantasy. Don't drop them for the week by week matchup. Try to keep them and roll them. Now, listen, when you're playing a high octane offense, you run into some of these teams that are playing really well, and so then maybe pick up somebody else, of course, but don't drop the Seahawks, because the other thing to keep in mind here, they're going against some struggling teams this year. And this is another reason we talked about in shows past about how I think you got to pump the over on the 7.5 win total for the Seahawks, because you're talking about a Hawks team that's playing teams like the Panthers, the Saints in week 2,
I consider both 49ers games.
Or week
honestly.
3 for the Saints, I think. I got to double check that. Not off the top of my head. Go ahead and look that up for me. But the Jaguars, the Panthers, the Saints, they've owned the Cardinals in that way. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity for this defense, certainly to be elite. But at the same time, you're talking about a team. Yeah, Saints are week 3.
Let's just talk about the first 4 games.
Yeah.
Okay. Niners.
It's going to be tough, sure.
Steelers, interesting. Aaron Rodgers is 45 years old.
Remember, Leonard Williams picked off Aaron Rodgers last year.
Exactly. And then we also see how DK Metcalf will work under. That'll be interesting.
Dude, remember,
will DK get in a fight with us?
DK and Reek got in some preseason scuffles in training camp last couple years. I wonder if that'll.
DK will definitely be wide receiver 1 and 2. Also,
and he will definitely pick a fight.
And I would not draft DK Metcalf because 1, if he picks a fight, he'll be suspended, and 2, he falls into.
DK is the guy you take in the mid rounds, and you hope he produces like he should, like his athletic ability says he should.
He also falls in the same category as like because the Steelers moved away from George Pickens, we know that he'll probably be receiver 1 and 2.
Yes.
So he'll probably be
like if you get to the 5th round and you haven't picked a receiver yet or something, like he could be a wide receiver 1 for no question.
He could just know that he'll be doubled every week. Saints, Cardinals, Buccaneers, Jaguars. That's how the first 5 games set up.
Yeah, and listen, there's some tough games in there like the Niners, Bucks. That's going to be tough. The Bucks game is going to be great. It's at Lumen Field. Both teams are going to wear their throwbacks.
I love that. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool.
Oh, I can't wait for that. So cool. But at the same time, I think you look at this. We were talking about the defense and where you pick them. The Seahawks defense is going to be good for that reason.
Yeah.
That they're going to be attacking. They're going to get sacks. They're going to get turnovers. And when you run into a team like the Niners, where there's a lot of unknowns, like they stumbled last year, but they're still a very good team.
You're higher on them than I am.
You can wait and see.
Yeah.
But we said it. I think the Seahawks team, the games they win, there's going to be a lot of 20-10, 17-13 type games.
17-13. The Seahawks give a 13 points a game. I consider this a good year.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot to like when it comes to the Seahawks fantasy, and I think that
I just don't expect to. Number 1 overall pick or first round pick.
No.
I would not.
I wouldn't touch a Seahawk until maybe late 2nd, early 3rd when you're talking about K9.
Now, if you're talking about in a league that you have 2 quarterbacks, like in this new iteration of the KOMO
like if you have a super flex and you're getting quarterback and they're flying off the board and you need to secure that second guy, obviously Darnold's the unquestioned starter.
Right. I would consider taking Sam Darnold as a flex guy.
Yeah. Like as your super flex, definitely not as your QB1, but. Just based on fantasy,
you may end up with him at QB1 if you take an alternative path. But just know it's a long season.
It is. It's a long season, and I think that when you look at it in this perspective, the Seahawks in our lonely corner of the Pacific Northwest, as far as the NFL is concerned, we don't get the attention that we should. Certainly, unless it's like the Legion of Boom era,
right?
And when you look at it in that way. Some guys can fly under the radar. And that's, again, going back to my point that, if you get hurt in week 1, don't come at me, that Zach Charbonnet could win you a fantasy league because he's going to go for a long time untouched, and he can be a flyer. But even as a flyer, I think he's going to produce. And you can talk about guys like, we mentioned the tight ends. Nobody outside our state knows who these guys are in the NFL.
No.
But I think
you get to be that guy.
Yeah, you can play this. Like if you decide to do the strategy where you're not taking one of the top 4 or 5 tight ends and you're going to wait and do it until like the very end, you can use you can take a flyer, on these guys.
What is your take on taking rookies?
It depends on the rookie. I think rookies can have a lot of upside.
Overall, not just Seahawks.
No, yeah, like overall. Listen, in one of my other leagues, I picked 7th. I'll be happy if I have Genty there. Mm-hmm. And that league's standard, so it's not PPR. So I go running back heavy in that one.
Yeah.
And when you're swinging around 3 and you want to take more running backs, like Amari and Hampton on the Chargers, I think is a great option.
Yeah.
Rookie running backs can be those kind of players that can again win you leagues. I had a big run in my league, and anybody else who had this guy can attest to it. Bucky Irving saved a lot of teams last year
for sure
because everybody thought Rachaad White was going to be the guy on the Bucks, and Bucky overtook him and is now the guy this year. A guy that is going to be gone by round 2 in most drafts
for sure,
especially standard league. So that's my take on running backs, especially rookies. To answer your question about rookies, they're the kind of players that can win your league if you're willing to take the risk. But there is that risk. We keep talking about Elijah Arroyo. I'm bullish on him. I know you are, but maybe, the Seahawks aren't as enthralled with his blocking. Now he's a great blocker, so I don't think that's the case. I'm
Right.
just throwing a hypothetical out there.
Yeah.
And suddenly he cedes time to say Eric Sauber to one of the other guys, and it's just it can be a thing. But I think he's a safe one. I don't mind drafting rookies. You just got to know the risk, and you have to pick them in the right spot.
Which is why I asked, because like I said, I did a fantasy draft this month, which is the equivalent to last year, essentially, when it comes to fantasy. And I have 2 rookies. I mentioned Ashton Genty, but I'm also starting Ty Warren.
Okay. Oh, the tight end, yeah.
From the coast. Now, I did that not knowing that Daniel Jones would be throwing to him, unfortunately.
Well, listen.
But, just...
I think he's a good pick there because...
It was a little bit earlier than I would.
Yeah, I mean...
The run on tight end started very early.
Yeah, and because people are afraid if you don't have one of the top tight ends, you're kind of in trouble there. And that can be true.
That's true.
But, you're talking about a Colts team that's similar to the Seahawks in that, they're not going to count on Daniel Jones to win games. They're going to count on their defense to keep them in the ballpark and hope that Jonathan Taylor can carry them there, and then just need to make a few passes here and there. They've got some nice receivers, but just make the passes they needed. And Ty Warren, I see being that red zone guy. So, I think that it's an interesting. I see the value there is the point.
For sure. Sure. I mean, I'm excited for fantasy, man. I'm excited I had a collapse not ever seen by mankind in the league last year. I need to. Well, adjust,
and listen, we always do advise. When we do our weekly Seahawks previews, we'll always talk about somebody on our waiver wire radar or somebody that's a good play for us in that way.
Right.
But we'll do that. But I hope. Again,
I think we helped people today.
I hope so. People are probably can comment like, "No, you did not help me." Maybe in 2 months when their team goes to heck. But
yeah, and there'll probably be those Cardinals fans that's probably just.
Oh God, those guys are getting shout outs. They're catching strays again.
It's okay. It's okay. I'll draft Kyler Murray. Honestly, he's another good option for
like a super flex.
For super flex, not Marvin Harrison. I hope Marvin Harrison Jr. has a good.
I think he will. That's the other thing about rookies is guys who were rookies last year. Maybe they didn't produce because it's their first time in the NFL.
Right.
Don't necessarily quit on them yet.
No.
They could be a value pick for you. No question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good luck drafting this weekend to everybody.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for next week, our season preview.
We're going to go game by game.
And give you our record predictions.
We're going to break it all down.
And we're going to talk about the Niners, of course.
We're talking about the Cardinals, and we're talking about the Rams. And I'm going to make our producer, Taylor Colu, very upset. Even though I'm higher on the Rams, there's some the Seahawks have the upper hand in many cases, I believe, against them.
So there you go.
But football's here. We're talking about football, y'all. Football.
Thank goodness.
Football. Yes.
Rejoice.
Rejoice.
Good luck, fantasy.
Go Huskies, by the way.
Go Dogs. Go Dogs.
Yes.
Go Hawks.
Go
See you
Storm.
next time. Thanks, Naj.
Thanks.